I want to start off by thanking you, Charles, and the rest of the community services team for having us. I will have to say this is by far the most professional format I've ever presented in. Usually we're in the back of a restaurant, talking to a small group of people, giving them some tips, but and luckily there's a number of experts up here in this panel that can answer a lot of the questions that I'd always have to look up. So thank you. So I want to start off by going into just the seasonal forecast. Obviously from June 1st through November 30th of every year, we have the fortunate responsibility to pay attention to hurricane season. It's just part of the price we pay living in Florida in a coastal community. This is the 7th year in a row we are seeing a prediction for an above average year. That's based off a number of factors, but primarily the experts out at Colorado State University who for some reason are experts in climatology for tropical weather. Them and the National Hurricane Center and any other organization who does hurricane predictions has indicated an above average year. So we've had that for 7 years in a row. Last year, as a point of reference, was the third most active season on record, and 2020, the year before, was the most active season on record. For the past 30 years, a standard season, a statistical average season would be about 14 named storms. This year, they're looking at around 20. Last year we had 21, so it could be a similar season as what we had last year. The La Nina conditions that limit the amount of wind shear that breaks up storms is the primary reason why we could have an active season. Additionally, the Azores high or the Bermuda high, which is a high pressure system out in the Atlantic, is strong this year, which pushes those storms further over west and could affect Florida. I say all that to pose the question, does that really matter? And my argument would probably be no. 1992, when all was said and done at the end of that hurricane season, it was categorized as an extremely below average season. But does anyone here remember what happened in 1992? Hurricane Andrew, Miami-Dade County, Homestead, and the rest of South Miami-Dade County was changed forever. That was an extremely below average season, yet that one storm certainly changed the face of Miami-Dade County. It changed the way that emergency management and hurricanes were responded to in the state of Florida and in the nation. So it just takes one storm affecting us for it to be an incredibly busy season for us locally. And we hope that everyone prepares exactly the same way regardless of what the prediction is. So there's my cheerful introduction as to the next 6 months we have ahead of us. We've already been confronted with the catastrophic potential tropical cyclone 1 when it came through here and eventually became Tropical Storm Alex. That was our early season storm. It was just a reminder. We really didn't get much here. We didn't get the rain that was even predicted. Most of that rain was south and further east of us. But it was a good early season reminder that this is just part of the deal of living in Florida. By a show of hands, who has been here less than 5 years? My goodness. So that really does confirm what we do with some informal surveying. I'm sorry, I'm the one who didn't mute. So we've been doing an informal survey for the past couple months, trying to get an idea of our audience, and the survey's confirmed what we see here tonight, what we see on the roadways. We have a lot of new residents to Florida who probably have not dealt with a hurricane season too often or very often. It's a different ballgame, right? It's not the Midwest storm season. It's not winter weather season. Hurricane season's very specific. Is that better? Okay. So hurricane season, it's part of living here in Florida, but we have to prepare. It's 6 months out of the year that at any given time, we can have a system out there that's going to affect us here locally. They're not, in many occasions, storms that are making landfall many miles from us can still affect us. But also keep in mind that no two storms are exactly the same. I imagine the hands are going to be very small in this, but how many were here in 2004 for Hurricane Charlie? Just a handful of you. That you'll probably never see another hurricane just like Charlie. It was incredibly small, strong. Yeah, and you don't want it, right? But that was a very compact storm that affected not even the entire county. It had Category 4 winds, but very minimal. It's too close. Very minimal storm surge. We're talking just a handful of feet. You can also have a Hurricane Michael, which is a Category 5 storm that made landfall in the Panhandle. That was a monster Category 5 storm with close to 20 feet of storm surge, devastating Mexico Beach area and Panama City area. No two hurricanes are exactly the same. A startling statistic is after Hurricane Katrina, they saw that the fatalities, specifically in the Mississippi area, tended to be senior citizens. And they were senior citizens because the folks that were living there in 1969 for Hurricane Camille, which was another monster storm, they thought they had seen it all. They thought they'd been through Camille and that they could weather a Category 3 Katrina, because that's what Katrina was when it made landfall, was a Category 3. Camille was a Cat 5. Well, Camille didn't have the storm surge, didn't have the 28 feet of storm surge that Katrina had. So unfortunately, you had people make the decision not to evacuate because they thought that they were coming at that situation with historical knowledge, and they thought they knew how every hurricane would affect their area. That's just not the case. Every storm is different, has its different characteristics, and it's important to understand that the direction that you're getting from local officials, the National Hurricane Center, is very specific to that storm, and that's what you need to be listening to. So now that I've painted that wonderful picture, what can you do now? Ellen, who's part of the emergency management team with me, she's going to get into some of the more preparedness stuff on the family level and the evacuations and sheltering. I'll get into how do you prepare your home. Who here has storm shutters or impact glass in your homes? That's great. Who here can put them up relatively quickly? Well, you're better off than me. When we enter into a 5-day cone, we have what we call a time delineated schedule in the Emergency Operations Center. There's a number of things we have to get accomplished. We have to make decisions on whether we're going to open a shelter. We have to make decisions on if we're going to activate the Emergency Operations Center. We have checklists for all these things. I suggest you do the same exact thing when it comes to preparing your home. Know what actions you're going to take when we enter a 5-day cone. Know what actions you're going to take when we enter a 3-day cone. Those are the timelines that you need to start making decisions about putting up shutters or calling someone who can come and help you put up shutters. For me, when we activate, I am at the Emergency Operations Center. I'm not going anywhere. Unfortunately for my wife, I will not be there to help her with the shutters. And my 6-year-old and 8-year-old are not going to be able to help her either. So I have built into my personal schedule, hey, at 3 days, we have a list of contractors that can come help her do that. We have a 2-story home. It's not something she can accomplish on her own, so I've built that into my plan. If you don't have shutters, absolutely right now is the time to seek a contractor or look into purchasing shutters, plywood, impact glass. You're going to be seeing very long lead times, but there's no time like the present to go ahead and look into that. Some more cost-effective measures, obviously your plywood, other barriers for your windows, but shutters that you personally can quickly deploy are great. Impact glass is great, very expensive, and it'd take you quite a while to probably get it in from the contractors. But having something to help mitigate the wind that would impact your home in a tropical event is pretty important. So when we talk about preparing your home, really the first thing you need to take into account, besides the shutters, is where exactly you live. Who here knows their storm surge evacuation zone? Uh-oh.
You mean the color?
Yes. So here in Charlotte County, we have 5 different color-coded zones that reflect storm surge evacuation zones. When we evacuate people, when we say you need to leave, it's because we have received a forecast from the National Hurricane Center that's indicating life-threatening storm surge into your area. We have, it goes red, orange, yellow, green, and purple. Nobody lives in purple. That's orange groves and cattle. But everywhere there's people that live in this county, you live in a storm surge evacuation zone. For some of those higher elevations, the yellows and greens, it would take quite a storm for us to get storm surge there. For instance, Hurricane Irma, we had to evacuate the red and orange zones based off the forecast we received from the National Hurricane Center about 30 hours prior to landfall. Luckily, that forecast didn't come true. But storm surge is the primary thing that we're going to ask you to leave your home for. So begin to understand your risk by knowing where you live and what storm surge evacuation zone you're in. You can find that out. Each one of you should have received one of our disaster guides. You can find that out by going to our website, typing in your address. You can do it here at the library if you like, and you'll know exactly what storm surge evacuation zone you're in. We still do have the collars on many of the stop signs here in Charlotte County. And failing all that, you can always call our office. We can help you with that. But I always like to upfront make sure everyone's aware of your zone, because when we communicate evacuations, that's not the time to start figuring out what hurricane evacuation zone you're in. So once you've just determined what zone you're in, determine how strong your home is. If you live in a mobile home, it goes without saying they're going to be one of the first people we ask to evacuate, and that's not because of storm surge. That's because mobile homes do not stand up well against wind. Just take, for instance, the EF1 tornado we had out in Gasparilla in January. Those winds were just shy of 110 miles an hour. So that's only a Cat 2, minor Cat 3 storm. Hurricane winds and mobile homes, manufactured homes, do not go well together. Also, if you're in an older home, you need to take that into account and figure out what the building code was at the time of construction, and if anything's been done to harden that. It's important that you know what wind mitigation has been done to your home, maybe prior to you being there. Just understanding your home and what you're comfortable with in that home during a storm is important. Next, after you've put up your shutters, you know how strong of a storm your home can withstand. You've put up your shutters based on your timeline of events that you have to accomplish leading up to a storm. Who here has potted plants? Ellen, raise your hand. She doesn't believe in breaking the ground. All her plants are in pots around her house. Those things, lawn furniture, anything else in your yard, that becomes flying debris. Those are missiles in a wind event. Not only are you protecting your neighbors' homes from possibly having your tulip fly through their window, but you're also protecting your own home. Build that into your plan. My suggestion, at least no later than 3 days out, go ahead and pull that stuff into the garage. You also can do things to mitigate against your garage door, because that's probably the weakest point in most homes. Garage doors being blown in through wind is the way that a lot of roofs are compromised. When the pressure destabilizes because the wind has entered the home through the garage, the roof very often will have some damage. There are some things you can do. You contact a contractor and figure out how to harden your garage door. Those are some of the easy steps of preparing your home, and all apparently they trust me to talk about is preparing the home. Ellen will get into some of the more preparedness tips and the importance of having plans in place going into hurricane season. And I just want to leave you with this. I think it's incredibly important, especially for relatively new residents, to come out to these, and I appreciate you guys taking hurricane season very seriously. It's not all we do, but it's probably the most important thing we do in Florida. Emergency managers in other parts of the country, they have other hazards to worry about, but at least for 6 months out of the year, especially when a pandemic's not raging through, hurricanes are a primary concern. So I appreciate you guys taking it seriously and coming out here tonight. So thank you.
Hello. I live in a 1975 farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. And I'm apparently making this vibrate. Is that better? Can everybody still hear me? There's 2 people living in my home. We don't have children and we don't have pets. Patrick has a wife, 2 kids, and a dog. Do you think we prepare for hurricanes the same way? No, absolutely not. We don't have to think of the same things. Both of us in my house go work at the Emergency Operations Center. Me for emergency management, my other half for IT. His wife works at the hospital. Do you think they have to work that into their plan? The reason why that's important is you are going to have conversations with your neighbors, and they are going to make you feel comfortable about your plan because your plan is the same as their plan. We both live in red zones. We both have similar issues that we're going to hit. We're both similar ages. Sad to admit that I'm that old, but we still plan differently. And that's important, that you don't look at your neighbors and think, oh, well, Sally's going to stay, so I'm going to stay. Or Sally's going to wait, so I can wait too. How many of you had to get up this morning and get dressed and go to work? Okay, so the people that are holding the hands are the people I'm talking to right now. So my workers, have those conversations now. When are you allowed to evacuate? Talk to your employer right now. Don't have the conversation when the storm's out there. I was a grocery store manager for 15 years, and during that time, we knew we weren't allowed to evacuate, because what do you need right before a storm? To make those stores money, right? Because you're not going to evacuate, and you are going to fight that little 93-year-old lady for that last case of water, right? So have those conversations with your employers. Now, the rest of you that didn't raise your hands, that don't have to go to a job. Maybe you guys are on pickleball, maybe you guys play mahjong and all those different types of things that you have to go to. But I promise you, they can wait until you get back. Have that plan now, have that conversation now. One of the biggest things that we get calls on during the storm is people afraid because they didn't evacuate. During Hurricane Irma, Donna, one of our CERT members, talked to a woman every 2 hours through that entire storm. She was 83 years old, and she lived on the beach, and she chose not to evacuate, and she was alone. So have that conversation now. Are you going to evacuate? Are you going to shelter in place? Is it safe for you to shelter in place? What are your options? Your options are, if you are in a good zone, right? You're not in a zone that's being evacuated. Your structure's safe. When was it built? All those types of things, right? Then you could potentially shelter in place. So what type of things do you need? One of the biggest complaints that we always get from people is, well, I bought all the stuff from the hurricane supply list. It's not me. Okay, there we go. I bought all the things from the hurricane supply list, and I don't like any of those things. I don't want to eat soup, right? Because that's what you buy for a storm. It's going to hit in the summer when it's hot and you have no power. So don't buy soup. Whenever you are preparing for a hurricane, you don't have to have gourmet meals, right? Patrick eats at a gas station every day, and he is a perfectly healthy human being. So you can live on just basic foods, right? Pretend you're going to a party, okay? Grab some chips, grab some crackers, grab some shelf-stable cheese, all of those different types of things. What would you bring if you had to bring something and you didn't want to cook, right? Can you survive on dry cereal or granola bars or beef jerky? Like in our house, Mighty Packed beef jerky, that's it, man. We're going to pack that. We're going to the Keys tomorrow. That's the first thing I've packed. I have nothing else. We're going with beef jerky and Reese cups right now. That's all we have, right? But what are the types of things do you need? Your medications. Have those conversations. What makes your family special, right? Our families are different. Do you have oxygen? Okay. Do you have something that makes it to where you have a special medical need? Is that going to make it different than your neighbor? Or think about your neighbor. My neighbor for a really long time was a 98-year-old woman from Jamaica. Sweetest little lady with her walker. She'd come over and let us know what we were repairing on our house for that weekend. And she was in our emergency plan for a really long time because I wasn't going to leave Beryl. And Beryl made sure I knew that I wasn't going to leave her, right? But we did include her in our plan. So look at that. How are you going to prepare? What are you going to bring? A lot of times people say, well, I put everything in a bin and now I can't lift it. I'm packing my house right now. I completely understand. Well, more so my other half understands because I pack the bins and then I say, put this in the car. But yeah, if you can't lift the bin, don't pack a bin that big. And a lot of times they say at the end of the year, well, now I have all this stuff I didn't use. Well, then have an emergency list. If I were to ask you right now where your flashlight was, how many of you would know where it was? How many of you would know where your batteries are? How many of you would know what a local radio station is? Okay, there we go. So now You are already starting to know some of the stuff. You already know what you have, where you have it, what to do, how to gather those items pretty quickly, and you use them all the time. Because if you're like me and you throw your flashlight for your hurricane kit in your garage, when you go to use it, Florida has done something amazing to your batteries, right? They have added this beautiful green stuff on there to add to your electronics, because that's what we do here in Florida. We take metal and we make it ugly. But yeah, so look at those types of things that you want in your kit. What do you really need? I know I need chocolate to survive. Okay? Those different types of things. Now, if you can't shelter in place, make sure that kit is something that you can bring with you. Okay? What are you going to bring with you when you go? How much water do you need? Right? 1 gallon a day per person per day, right? You're bringing a pet? Guess what? Brian's going to tell you pets are people. So start adding all of those different types of things to preparing for your home. Don't prepare like everyone else just because you have similar things, right? Just have those conversations. Look at what do you have? What do you need? Look around your house. What's really important to you? Don't pack the entire house when you go to evacuate. And more importantly, don't evacuate last minute. We got so many angry phone calls after Hurricane Irma of people yelling at us because they ran out of fuel when they were evacuating and they couldn't get as far away as they wanted. And we asked them, when did you start your evacuation? 24 hours before the storm. Those are people that didn't have jobs. If you know that you're going to evacuate, why do you want to stay here in the grocery store duking it out over the last pack of beef jerky? Because I'm going to win. Because beef jerky is a big deal in my house, okay? But yes, leave, have a hurricane, right? Get in that car, go, call your kids. Or better yet, don't call them and show up and expect dinner and then leave your clothes everywhere, right? It's payback. Go to the grandkids. Go to those different types of things. That's what I used to do. I used to ship my parents off to my brother, right? So go see them. Go do that. Leave early. That way then you can watch it, right? You can watch Jim Cantori come in and blow around on the TV. And you know what you're not worried about? You're not worried about losing power in August when it's 104 degrees outside. From the show of hands, not very many people were here during Hurricane Charlie. Probably most of us were. I remember being here during Hurricane Charlie. That was exciting. You learn how to sweat everywhere with all of your family inside of a hot house. So evacuate, have that conversation, get out early. Where are you going to go? If you don't have relatives, where can you stay inside Charlotte County if you don't want to leave that far? Do you know anybody that lives in Deep Creek? If you don't, start finding activities with people in Deep Creek, change churches, whatever. Become friends with those people, right? Have those conversations. Look for those green zone people. Make their favorite dish. Learn how to bake their favorite cake, right? That way you can evacuate to their house. People always ask us, how come you didn't build a shelter near my house? Then we ask where they live. Oh, well, I live on Beach Road. Okay, well, let's talk about the road that you live on, first of all. You live on a beach. So no, we're not going to build a shelter there because now we're going to evacuate you and the shelter. That makes no sense. So unfortunately, our shelters aren't next to most of the people that we're evacuating. There's a reason we're evacuating you, because you can't be in that area. So you're going to have to drive a little bit to go for our shelters. But unless you want to go stay in a building with you and 1,500 of your newest friends that you've just met that are also coming to the shelter, I would suggest you have other options, right? That's a last resort. The shelter is for those people that raise their hand at the beginning, those employers that are at the grocery store. When you see that cashier scanning you out as you're leaving town, we need that for her, right? And her 2 kids. That's where we need the space for. You have other options, so don't wait if you are going to evacuate. Because there's a lot of times where people say, well, I'm going to see what the storm's going to do. Okay, worst case scenario, you drive out of town, you get to stay at a hotel, mess up somebody else's room, they have to clean it, and now you get to come back, right? So start looking for those hotels now. If you have pets, find out what hotels are pet friendly. And if you can't find one, find what franchises become pet friendly whenever there's a disaster. Because there are some, the Hamptons and different ones, I don't know, they change all the time with their policies, but there are some whenever we are in evacuation that they do open up their policies. And you'll notice that because anytime after there's a big storm in Florida, any hotel you go into smells amazing for a little while after it until they get the carpets clean. But start having those conversations now if you're going to evacuate. Prepare early. I'm not trying to sound like a doomsday person, but whenever you get to that grocery store, we had a weather forecaster that one time he went around the store and he took pictures of everything, and all the shelves were bare except for one item, and that was pickles. So the thing that I can urge you guys is start liking pickles, because that's the only thing that's going to be left whenever there's a disaster in the store, because people buy everything. I was a grocery store manager. For some reason, we sell out of ice cream, so don't buy ice cream. Buy shelf-stable food. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. That's a lot of good information there. She talks about evacuating, and I saw a lot of hands there talk about y'all have been here for less than 5 years. I've been here, my wife and I have been less than 5 years. We came in 2017, which was the year of Irma. My brother lives in Texas. He'd been through Hurricane Camille in 1969. So I called my brother and I said, so this hurricane thing, tell me about it. He said, well, you really ought to ride this one out. This is your first hurricane, ride it out. And I said, why? He said, so you'll know never to do that again. So that was pretty good advice, which my wife and I have ignored. So if you choose not to evacuate, unless you do like to sweat, like Ellen said, or you like camping in your backyard with the bugs and all the wildlife, a generator may be an answer to keeping yourself comfortable. So I'm going to talk about generator safety a little bit and how to pick the right generator. Show of hands, anybody have a generator at their house? Okay. There are a lot of different kinds of generators, a lot of choices. You can have a whole house generator like a Generac. You can have portable generators. You can have solar generators. How to pick a generator is based on how many watts your appliances pull. So you have to decide what you want to run with that generator. If you're okay to get by with just running a couple of fans or your refrigerator, that's fine. If you want to run the whole house and all the lights in the house and throw a hurricane party, then you ought to go with like a Generac, a whole house. And you have to check with your homeowners association to make sure that the fuel source is okay. I do live in Deep Creek, so y'all are welcome to come over to my house.
What's your address?
Okay, we'll talk afterwards. Just bring beer, wine, food. Come on over. So you have to make sure that the fuel source that you choose, if it runs on propane or gasoline, your generator, if that's what you want to do. As far as safety goes, the most important thing with a generator is carbon monoxide. You want to make sure that your generator is not run in an enclosed space. Even a garage with the doors open can cause a lot of carbon monoxide to accumulate. And carbon monoxide is a silent killer. It's an odorless, colorless gas, and you'll go to sleep and not wake up if you are running a generator in an improper format. Close to windows, shouldn't be that near windows or anything like that. So you have to decide what appliances, what wattage those appliances run, and then you pick a generator that is rated for that wattage, and then you choose whether you want a gasoline generator or a solar generator. There are a lot of good solar generators on the market. that will not run your whole house, but they don't require gasoline. You don't have to worry about gasoline storage, finding fuel, disposing of the fuel once the hurricane is over. Clean, no emissions, no carbon monoxide problems. There are a lot of manufacturers out there, and you can do a Google search, look it up on the internet. If you do choose to use a gasoline generator, one piece of advice that I would have for you is learn how to use the generator, practice using the generator, do a trial run with the generator. You don't want to buy a generator, unbox it, and then have it sit there until 3 days before the storm. My next door neighbor, he bought a really nice generator that would run the refrigerator, fans, a lot of appliances, there's some lights in their house. Well, the last storm that came along, I saw him out in the backyard 2 days before the storm was supposed to hit, and he's trying to get his generator to work because he bought the generator and hadn't run it since. That was 2 years ago. So 4 weeks, 5 weeks after the storm had already left and gone, he's still trying to get his generator going. So run your generator at least once a month to make sure it runs good, because gasoline-powered generators are machines, they're internal combustion engines. So just sitting, especially in a Florida environment, between the weather, the insects, the other live creatures that have a tendency to habit our area, can really tear up a generator in no time. Squirrels like to chew on the wiring, will get in there. Insects build nest in there. So maintain your generator. The fuel, if you choose to stockpile your fuel for a gasoline generator, you may need to use a stabilizer. So there are quite a few stabilizers for the fuel that are on the market. Typically, fuel will stay good for 6 months to a year, even with a stabilizer in it. So if your fuel is more than a year old, you should dispose of it. So if your question then is, well, how do I get rid of the fuel? The county recommends that you use the old fuel half and half with new fuel, put it in your car, burn it up, use it. If you have a relatively small amount of unused fuel from your generator that you want to dispose of, it is a hazardous waste, but you can take it in a sealed container to the recycle transfer stations and dispose of it. So generators, and unless you want to sit around and sweat, don't want to eat cold meals, then generators can be very useful. How many people have generator? Gasoline generators? Solar generators? Okay. Environmentally friendly folks. So that's about all the topics I have. Any questions? That's it? Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. I own an automotive repair center, and if you're going to evacuate, leave now, because with the price of fuel, the quantity of fuel that's going to be available, you're not going to leave. You're not going to be able to leave, and that's all there really is to it. I recommend to a lot of people that if they are knowing where they're going to go, and the hurricanes are funny. I've been through 9, I think 9 of them. They twist and turn and go wherever. So usually, I sent my mother away once, and I sent her east, and the damn storm went east. I had to call her midway and say, go west to my sons. So you never really know where you're going to go. But a really easy way to maximize your distance and minimize your fuel usage, pick an area someplace out and then take the auto train, drive to Orlando. Almost everyone can leave this county and get to Orlando and get an auto train ticket and then go. You won't have fuel costs, you won't have evacuation problems, and you can pretty much go east, west, north, or south once you hit DC, and choose whatever. Now, I know it's a long way out, but it's also a safe way out, especially if you're older and you don't want to deal with evacuation. Evacuation routes, 75 becomes the world's biggest parking lot. The one thing you don't want to be, besides being stuck in an evacuation backup, is being the cause of it, because then you're just marked for death. They just put the sights on you. So having enough fuel to get to where you're going to go, having a car that's going to get you to where you want to go. And we talk about batteries. If you have a battery in your car that's 3.5 years old, has never given you a lick of problems, and you're thinking about bugging out of town, buy a new battery now. Because that battery will fail without a moment's notice when you need to go. Tires also. Tires are one of the most important things to be good, because tires, people worry about flats and lack of, and nails, and there's going to be crap flying all over. You're going to be driving all over through all kinds of trash. And tires are made to wick the water off the road, to keep you on the road. So if you're going to put tires on, if you have an all-wheel drive car, you have to buy 4. If you have a front-wheel drive or a rear-wheel drive car, you can pair them off. Make sure you put the newest tires and the best tires on the rear of the car at all times. And everyone fights with this and about this, but the rear of the car is and it's going to hydroplane on you, even if it's a rear-wheel drive car. And if you lose control of your vehicle in the front, if you get a flat or it starts to meander over the road, you got that steering wheel in front of you, and you have a negative control. When you have a rear sliding out from under you, a rear of the vehicle, you have to know at a moment's notice. It has to be instinctual to know which way you're going to turn that steering wheel. So if the rear end is going to the right, which way do you turn your steering wheel? Oh, you guys are good. Which way will you turn it when you're in a panic and you see your rear end going right? Where do you turn? They turn left, and then you do a flat spin. Okay? Secondly, if you have concerns about your health or breathing problems and you have to run with the air on all the time, now the air is a luxury when you're evacuating. Put the windows down. 260 air, well, you don't do 60 miles an hour. So 2 miles an hour, 2 windows open is a lot better than running your AC all the time. If you have breathing difficulties, you need to make sure that your air conditioning systems are working properly. You need to make sure that your cabin filters are clean or have been recently replaced, because that's what you're breathing in, what's going over those filters. You have to also make sure that the cooling systems of your vehicle are maintained, because the cooling system is one of the main parts of failure for air conditioning. If you have a cooling system issue, your air won't work, because they work next to each other and they work in conjunction. So you need to make sure if you have 90,000 miles plus on your car, you have the original belts and hoses, go with God, because you're on borrowed time. 9 years or 90,000 miles. That's the rule of the thumb. You got to realize that in the older days, the hoses would swell up, or they turn colors, they get mushy. With the new rubber, the new compounds now, they don't do that anymore. They just fail. They just fail. And intake manifolds are all plastic now. There's so much plastic fatigue, and sitting on the road with the car running for hours and hours, and the air going for hours and hours, it's not only using way more fuel than you can afford to use. 2, it's putting a whole lot of stress on the car, on the charging system, on the cooling system, and on you itself, because once you start having problems inside the cabin, then you're in panic mode or in sneaker mode. And so these are the things you need to look at. As far as what to carry in the car, you need to have 2 separate kits. You need a breakdown kit where duct tape fixes everything. If you have an older car that has more than one belt or V belts, 2 pairs of pantyhose, because they can make a makeshift belt and a heartbeat. Screwdrivers, hammers, a hammer. Yeah, it gets you in a lot of trouble too if your wife finds it. It's my hurricane kit. Screwdrivers, pliers, adjustable wrenches. We commonly refer to those as metric fit-alls. Water pump pliers. Know how to change a flat. You should have a backup battery for your cell phones that you can keep charged. So if you have to shut down the car and you need the battery for your cell phone, you have usually 4 or 5 hours of battery on that. You need to have a jump box. And anyone that has a vehicle now doesn't have a jump box in their car is once again just flirting with disaster. And jump boxes, basically a lithium battery. And so if your battery goes dead for whatever reason, or your car doesn't start because you didn't replace your battery like I just told you to, you can open the hood and not have to depend on any good Samaritan or any bad person to help you. So most jump boxes now, good ones, have, not only do they have ports and cables to start your car, but they also have ports to charge your batteries and use your cell phones too, and emergency lighting. LED lights, you can buy LED lights every place and just plug it into these jump boxes and at least have light in the vehicle if you're broken down or you need to shut down. And you have to know where you're going and how you're going to get there. And when those roads are closed, how are you going to circumvent them? Don't depend on Waze or Google Maps, because they're going to take you around the block 17 times. And you depend on Waze, it's going to tell you where the traffic is, and you know where the traffic is because you're in the middle of it. So now, if you decide not to leave town and you want to keep your car, because in case at the last minute you decide to go to a shelter or go to his house in Deep Creek, you know, same thing. Batteries included, you know. If you have a vehicle that's 3.5 years old or 4 years old, you still have the original battery, now's the time to replace the battery. And I don't care what kind of battery you buy, but you have to replace that battery. My favorites are, you know, either Napa batteries or Interstates or Deca battery seem to be my top 3 as far as dependability and affordability, because that's the word. If you have a garage, obviously you're gonna keep the car in the garage. If you have a carport, keep the car in the carport. Now, there are some proponents that say tape the inside of your side windows and tape the inside of your windshields. If you have any kind of tint on your windows, you're gonna ruin it, first off. Secondly, the only reason that's even mentioned is because if something happens to shatter the window, all the windows in the car are safety glass, they'll shatter, and they'll spider web. All that does is keep it from falling inside the car, all right? Do not put stuff under your windshield wipers, because anytime you lift anything that's surface to surface, the wind's gonna get under it, and it's gonna lift it. Don't put the car on blocks, because if you have to get going, you have to go find the jack and unblock it. Don't put the car on, don't drive up on 2x4s or anything, because what you're doing is you're giving the wind more room to go up and under, okay? If you're in a flood area and you have more than one vehicle, take your spare vehicle or your favorite vehicle or your I'm gonna travel vehicle and go find a high point in Deep Creek. Just park it there. Doesn't care how you get there, just park it there. Don't fight for the garage across the street from me in Punta Gorda, because those spots are already taken. I watched that garage fill up. And the city has most of the floors. So, but just find someplace high and dry and park it there. No one's gonna mess with it, because everyone else is gonna be either running or taking care of their own. It's imperative that your car is, kept in tune, so you know it's gonna start. If you're having problems starting now, when you're not in a rush and not in a pinch, now's the time to take care of it. If you've been driving around with that little orange light on forever, because the guy at the box store said, "Don't worry about it. The light's fine. Don't worry about it." You don't know what's being hidden under that light, because there are 1,599 codes that light is responsible for alerting you about. Once the light's on, you don't know what else is going on under the car. So, and most of the time when someone gets that device, it's a loose gas cap, it's an evap code, where it's, that's the advice they give you in the parts houses. Don't worry about it, it's on your gas cap. Well, that light's on, now you don't know if there's a problem with a crank sensor, or there's a problem with the fuel injector. The car is not running right, address it now before you have to use that car to get out. If, so far as keeping, kits in the car, I kind of breezed over that, especially if you're evacuating. Find a cooler that has a 12-volt plug to it that can be kept cold. If you're diabetic or you have to have medications that need to be insulated or cooled, that's important that you keep those medications in the proper environment. Fluids to keep with you, antifreeze in the back. Do not put gallons of gas in your trunk, because that makes you a rolling Molotov cocktail. Engine oil, water, distilled water, you can put it in your radiator, you can drink it, okay? Antifreeze tastes sweet, but it's not real good for your health. The biggest box of pepper you can buy, or barley, you can buy, regular flake pepper, because if you're driving and something hits you in the radiator and it starts to leak, it's organic, it'll stop the leak, and it won't clog your engine. And if it goes into any part of the engine, it'll burn off. So these are the hints that, can save you, make you or break you, and that. Just pepper. Put it in a radiator. If you have a radiator leak and it's leaking and you're trying to stop the leak, just regular pepper will congeal. Or barley. Barge leak? Everyone's heard of barge leak, right? Everyone ever hear barge leak? Yeah. You know what barge stands for? Barley. All it is compressed barley. And that's why it doesn't clog. That's why it was the favorites of many mechanics, because it wouldn't clog. Eventually it breaks down and passes through the system. So, powdered barley or pepper, even an egg. An egg will cook in the radiator if it's hot enough and seal it. And like I said, of course, always duct tape. Make sure you have a pair of needle nose pliers, regular pliers, screwdrivers, flashlights. Every good jump box has a flashlight. One of the most affordable jump boxes there are, you can buy them on Amazon, is the Nocos. They average $50, $75. Don't buy the $29 one. Noco, N-O-O-C-O. So it's a good thing. Make sure it's charged before you check it once a month, okay? And like if you're going to have a generator, and I'm kind of going to go back and forth, all right? Because like everything else, generator has got the same engine as a car, and you're going to have a generator. I would buy nothing but non-ethanol fuel. I run every vehicle I own on non-ethanol fuel at all times, because ethanol will not last 6 months. And what people don't understand about fuel is that the ethanol is added at the tank wagon. So the gas is full, he's coming up goes under the racks, they start to fill the tanker, and that's when the guy says, all right, 10% ethanol, let's see. 1, 2, 3. Did you give me a cup of coffee? Yeah. 2, 3. You never know how much ethanol you're gonna get. Ethanol is a hydroscopic alcohol. It absorbs water, and it will stop you dead. And if you have gas left in your garage, bring it to my shop. I'll take care of it for you. We'll put it in the waste containers and have my oil recovery guys. Don't put it in your car, because I've had too many people find gas cans in their car, in the garage and use it, and end up buying fuel pumps, and they're not cheap anymore. So any kind of fuel you use, figure, depending on the size, there's actually, if you go on Google, you can buy an electrical debt calculator. You don't buy it, you just tick it. And I'll tell you what your electrical debt is for your home. And see, so I have propane in my house. So I have a 2-story house, 4 bedrooms. My whole electrical debt is less than 14,000 amps because I have the gas. I don't have to worry about dryers or heat or anything. I can cook. So that's the size generator you buy. Then you have to decide what you're going to keep on. Well, there's no reason to keep your generator running all night anyway, because all it does is tell the thieves where they are. Okay? And then secondly, aside from the carbon monoxide issues, the longer you can keep your generator working full, the less fuel you have to stockpile. And ethanol, non-ethanol fuel, no one buys it anytime, unless you have a motorcycle, you're a fanatic like me, or you have a boat. That's going to be the first fuel to run out, because everyone's going to want it. Everyone's going to want it right now, and they're not going to care if you need 2 5-gallon barrels. They're going to have 12 in their truck. And there's no, people are funny. Like Jan Allen says, you're going to fight the 93-year-old for the last case of water. You're going to fight the next guy who has 17 gallons of gas in his car, and he empties the tank. As far as running ethanol fuel and using stabilizers, if you shop now, you can buy ethanol destabilizers, and basically what it does is it breaks down the ethanol in the fuel. So it doesn't rid it, it doesn't cover it. It will just break it down so it becomes as close to non-ethanol as you can without actually buying non-ethylated fuel. And I think that's about all I can do with cars. So if something pops up, I'm sure we'll have questions later on.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay? Is this mic on? Okay. My name is Adam Brown. I'm an officer with Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, or FWC. I've been an officer in this area for about 16 years. And a lot of you guys are not, have not been in this area for a long time, so it's equating to DNR or Game and Fish or wherever you might be from. Basically, Marine Patrol, Game Warden. That's what encompasses my job. My job has a lot. What I'm going to talk about tonight is just hurricane boat prep, but when we get to the question and answer portion, and I'm going to breeze through this because I know that we're getting short on time, but when we get to the question and answer portion, if you guys have questions about avoiding conflict with wildlife during a storm or after a storm, stranded wildlife, orphaned wildlife, things like that, I can certainly answer those kinds of things too. But I'm going to focus on the boat preparation. So one of the bigger reasons why people come down to Florida is, of course, to be near or on the water. Do we have some boat owners in here? We got a few. Okay. So I'll really be talking to you guys here. I would say when you're getting ready for a storm to become to make landfall, don't wait too long. That's the same exact thing that everybody down here has said is plan early. Don't wait till the last second. So in here, I've got a little handout. It's got some good information for you, and I'm probably just going to go down the line here. But number one, when you have a storm that's been forecast and you've got some time, take photos of that vessel prior to the storm making landfall. That way you can see any kind of damage that was on the vessel prior to the storm hitting, and then you can compare that to the damage that you may have afterward. You can use that for insurance purposes. Take all the equipment off the boat that you can. Any kind of GPS, fish finders, depth finders, fishing equipment, anything you can get off that boat that could potentially be damaged, lost, or become a projectile, you need that off the boat. And that can include, if you're talking about a sailboat, the boom, the tiller, the wheel, anything that you think you can remove. Get it off the boat, secure it somewhere safely inside a facility. Secure all the windows, doors, hatches, make sure to disconnect the fuel lines. The more air and waterproof you can make that boat when we have this bad weather event, the better off you will be. Check your anchor lines, your chains, your cleats, eye bolts. This is going to be mainly for boats that are going to be stored on the water, and I'll get to that in a minute. For smaller and lightweight boats, it's best to trailer the vessel as far inland as possible, and that will lessen the effect of the wind. Ideally, you put it in a wind-rated building if you can. If you can store it in some sort of facility where it is completely out of the weather, that's ideal. Not everybody has that option. If you are storing it outside and it's on a trailer, store it in an open area where you're not near any kind of trees or any kind of debris that could potentially fall on it immediately. If you can get to a field, we had a storm that came by with Irma a couple of years ago, and my neighbor has a bigger property than I do, and he offered, hey, if you want to put your boat over here, you can. I'll allow you to put it there, and we can strap it down. And that's exactly what I did. I had it in my driveway right underneath an oak tree, and that's a terrible idea. So we took it over to his property. He has a bigger open field, and I was able to tie some straps down with some ground anchors and to secure it to the ground. And if anything were to happen, the trees that were in the vicinity are not going to be close enough to cause significant damage, ideally. You just never know. If storing your vessel on the water, anchor your vessel with at least 2 anchors, more if possible, and attempt to position the bow in the direction of the strongest winds. I don't know how many of you may have sailboats in here, but every single storm we have sailboats run loose. It doesn't matter if it's a hurricane. We do find that people oftentimes don't put enough length of line in their anchor line, and I'll get to that here, but one of the things I note are be sure to anchor line lengths are at least 10 times the depth of the mean water line. So if you're anchored in 10 feet of water, put at least 100 feet of anchor line out there, chain and line. That way, when that water rises, because it will rise much higher than you think it will, you're not going to lose that anchor and have it come loose, and then it will be drifting and it becomes a projectile towards someone's home or another vessel. Make sure you're checking the automatic bilge. That's the pump that will pump the water out when the water goes down into the inner workings of the boat. The battery needs to make sure that that's fully operational and that bilge is working automatically. There should be a little switch. It's a float switch. When that water gets to a certain level inside that vessel, it'll float and it'll kick on your bilge and it'll kick that water out. Make sure all of that is working properly. You need that to work as long as possible so you're not having to recover your vessel from the bottom. Do not leave the vessel on a lift or davits, and that's one that I've personally seen quite a bit. We have boats that drift away constantly. They think, okay, well, I've got a pretty high lift. My boat is a big boat. It's heavy. What are the chances that this thing's going to go anywhere? I think it's secure there. Boats drift off or blown off every storm we have. That is not a good idea. You need to seek alternative. If you can put it on a trailer and put it in a wind closed facility or out in an open field, that's better than leaving it on a lift or a davit. Back in 1993, I'm a Florida boy. I've been here all of my life. But I grew up north of Tampa, and so back in 1993, we had a storm called the No-Name Storm. The reason they called that is because it was before hurricane season. It happened in March. Hurricane season doesn't officially start until June, and so they didn't want to consider it a hurricane, but it had hurricane strength wind, and it blew through right where I was at. And I remember we lived on a canal, and the water rose past our first seawall, up to the second seawall, over the grass, and it was up all the way up to midway through our steps. And we had one of the higher homes in that area when I was growing up. The water probably rose at least 15 feet. And as I'm watching this storm, there's a big Wellcraft Scarab about 32, 36-foot boat that just comes screaming down. Nobody's on the boat, but it's just unmanned. The wind's pushing it, and it slams into the house directly across from us. And we have video of it, and it caused some significant damage. And then, of course, it was there for weeks afterwards because it's difficult to get anybody to come out and try and recover the vessel at that point. So leading it on a lift or a davit is not a good idea. And also, number one, do not stay aboard the vessel. I don't know that anybody else in this room lives on a boat or maybe sometimes stays on a boat, but we do have a large community of folks in this area that spend the majority of their time on a vessel. And when they are on that boat during a storm, you're asking for trouble. It's a terrible thing. It puts us in danger as well because sometimes those rescue calls will come in and now we need to go respond. And sometimes we have to weigh whether or not it's safe for us to actually respond to you. So please do not stay on your boat. Do all these steps. Make sure your boat is secure. Make sure the hatches are closed. You've got the proper anchor lines and all your cleats and things are currently intact. And then get off the water. Go find shelter. Get away from that water and then come back. And hopefully you've weathered the storm well and your boat is intact. But if it's not, at least you know that you've survived it. And finally here, I've got a little shopping list. It talks about a lot of the things we already talked about, but extra dock line, duct tape, of course, is fantastic. Ratchet strap, sealant, extra chain and anchor. These things are going to be hard once that storm has been forecast to find in stores. So go get those things now. Put them in your garage, put them on your boat, make sure you have them ready now because when that storm starts to get forecast and you find out, all right, 3 or 4 days, this thing's coming to me, you go to the store and they're going to have empty shelves. Just like everything else, you go to Publix, they're going to have empty shelves. So it's good to make sure that you're planning and preparing well before the storm actually heads this way. Anyway, that'll do it for me. We'll head over to my partner here.
Good evening, everybody. Hey, my name is Brian Jones. I'm the division manager with Charlotte County Animal Control. Been with the department for 25 years. What I'm going to talk about tonight is how to prepare your pet in the event that you have to evacuate. My overarching message tonight is never leave your pets behind. Through my 25 years of service, the 2 major weather events that I was at the helm for at Animal Control was Hurricane Charlie in 2004 and Hurricane Irma in 2017. Both of these storms taught us a lot about how to deal with animals in disasters, both pre-storm, during storm, and post-storm. One of the things that we saw in Hurricane Charlie was people either leaving their animals behind, confined to a house, and they evacuated, or they decided not to evacuate because they couldn't find a place to take their animal. Both are very unacceptable. Leaving an animal in a compromised scenario like that is very unfair. We've even had a couple of animal fatalities because of that. The good news is, in 2016, we hosted our first pet-friendly shelter in Charlotte County. We are very good at pet-friendly shelters. We have 4 facilities in Charlotte County that can be used as a pet-friendly shelter. What is a pet-friendly shelter? It's a shelter you can bring your pet with. You can bring your pet to. You can remain with your animal through the course of the storm. Our primary locations, as it stands today, is Kingsway Elementary School in Liberty. During Hurricane Irma, both of those shelters were activated. We thought we would get about 50 animals in each, and boy, were we wrong. There was about 150 to 200 animals in each. So now the animals stay in a different location than the owners. They are kept in a separate area of the shelter, and there is a schedule of owners to come in, spend time with your dog, walk your dog as long as it's safe outside, check on your dog. Nobody knows your dog better than you. And I know that we're running short on time, so I'm going to keep this very short. By show of hands, how many people have animals in here, have pets? I mean, they're everywhere. Have a carrier that your pet fits into. Don't have a small carrier and a Great Dane. It doesn't work. And I say that because we had people show up without carriers, without crates, on a leash. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but on a leash, now your animal is exposed to other animals in that area, to other people in that area. The best thing that you can do for the safety of your animal is to keep it confined safely in a carrier that's big enough for the animal and it is transportable. You can get them with wheels. I've seen people on hand trucks and stuff, and just whatever you have to do to move that animal safely. If you are evacuating, it's a very stressful time. There's no question about that. If you take some time to prep for your pet, I promise you it will, mitigate some of that stress and make the situation a little more tolerable. Rabies vaccines, microchip information, have it on your phone, but also print a copy of it. And I put this, I have a handout that's going to be available for $20. It's if you want a signed one, it's $25. So it's going to be on that back table, and it lists everything that you need to have in your pet grab-and-go kit. This is a duffel bag that you can pack full of all this stuff on here, so when the time comes, you grab it, you put your pet in your crate, and you go. And it's everything that you think would be on there is on there, from your leashes, your carriers, medications. But really, make sure that you stay updated, make sure that you stay flexible, plan early, especially with pets. If you are going to stay behind in a storm, like Patrick said earlier, know your house. Know, if this is a safe environment from you and or your pet. So our overarching goal is to, preservation of pets' lives, and we want to make sure that they do okay during a storm because they're nervous. I have a 15-pound Shih Tzu that, shakes like you wouldn't believe when I take them to the veterinarians or the groomers. So animals in storms are going to be disoriented. They're going to be stressed out. One of the questions was posed to me prior to coming here, like what happens if there's a medical event with an animal at the shelter during the storm? Well, I can assure you at Animal Control, we are not veterinarians, we are not doctors, we do not recommend medical things. I recommend, if you know your animal's medical condition or things that it's susceptible to, talk to your veterinarian, get some medicine early prior to a storm arriving. There are some over-the-counter medications that you can use to help your dog or cat calm down. Talk to your veterinarian about that, because I don't want to sit here and tell you to ingest something into your animal's system and then something goes wrong, because all animals are different, all situations are different. That should be evaluated by a doctor every single time. One of the other things that's very important, my last thing, take a picture of you and your pet for identification purposes. We did see in Charlie, people would get separated from their pets, and if you have a picture of you and your pet, that could come in handy if there's some confusion about who owns what, You have black cats, German Shepherd, they all look the same. So that's the information that I have here tonight. Do not leave your pets behind. At Animal Control, we like to consider them family members. If you evacuate, your pet goes with you. I can tell you this from a lot of the conferences that I've been to around Florida. There is a movement in the state of Florida right now to make every county pet-friendly, pet shelter or pet-friendly shelter friendly. So I feel really lucky here in Charlotte to have 4 of them. I could probably think of some counties that don't have one of them. What are they doing in those counties? I do not know. But Charlotte County residents, you guys have options here, safe options for your pet. Is it a little stressful? Yeah, it is. In Irma, it was really crowded there, and a lot of animals there, but everybody made it through. You know how many people got bit? 0, which I found amazing. I thought I would have dog attacks all over the place. But, and that's another important thing because of crates. You don't want animals coming into contact with other animals. Now you got an animal fight. Now you got an injured animal, and then the power goes out and the storm hits. So not a good scenario. Be safe. Use logic. Use common sense. You know your animal better than anybody, and I'd be more than happy to take questions when they get to the Q&A part. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Paul Koenigs. I'm a public insurance adjuster. I don't know how I got the last straw here to go over insurance, which nobody likes, but it's a necessity that all of us have. And for those of you who have never been through an insurance claim, it's quite an ordeal anymore. When you have damage to your home or your business or your property, you have different insurance policies. Most of you, I presume, have homeowners insurance. You want to make sure that you have a good idea of what your homeowner's insurance covers. I've been in the business over 30 years. I used to work for insurance companies. In the last 20 years, I've been a public adjuster, which means I help consumers only. People can hire me to help them when they have an insurance dispute and so on in claims. I worked for 3 solid years after Charlie because there was a lot of issues that happened. And quite honestly, you know, it's really luck of the draw, because you get insurance company adjusters who come here from out of state because there are so many thousands of claims. So sometimes you can end up with some good people that, you know things and can help you. Other times it could be really an issue. The state licenses people like myself to go out there and help you if you have an insurance claim. You would hire me to work for you in a hurricane situation and other situations. I charge a fee of 10% of whatever I get you from the insurance company. But in all these cases, and especially after Charlie, on a lot of these claims that had to be reopened where people didn't get enough money and the contractor was charging X and the insurance company paid Y and it never matched up, you know, I ended up getting people 30, 40%, 50% more than they originally got, because the insurance company adjusters, when they're here originally, and the ones that come in, they're going to get the obvious damage. They're going to see when that tree fell on your house, they're going to, get the roof. But then there's a lot of things that, you know, are internal or other damages that are missed. So a lot of times, you know, the basic stuff can kind of get covered, and more than likely you'll be okay in the beginning. But then when you go to repair your home or your business, you'll find out, gosh, there's hidden damage. Well, they don't, even nowadays, if you have a water or fire claim, they don't pay for hidden damage up front. The insurance companies like to supplement claims. They like you to come back for more and more if you can justify it. And a lot of times it takes someone like me or someone experienced in the business to be able to go back there and show them, no, you didn't pay for this. This wall has insulation, it got wet, it's soaked, and so on. So you have to know what your policy covers. The main thing you want to make sure you have on your policy is replacement cost value. They abbreviate it as RCV. They also have what they call ACV, which is actual cash value, which is the depreciated amount. You don't want that on your home, or especially you don't want that on your personal property. Yes, does it save you money on your premium? Yes. But depreciated specialty contents can be devastating. In Charlie, I witnessed so many people had ACV on their contents. And so, you know, I got a couch that's 10 years old. It was a $500 couch, and they depreciated it by more than 50% because it was 10 years old. If you have replacement cost, then you get that $500 couch reimbursed again once you replace it. So a lot of times you've got to make sure you check with your agents or whoever's selling you the policy that you know exactly what your policy covers, and especially that you want to have replacement cost. The best thing that, and as everybody has here said, especially when you do have an insurance claim, there's a little saying that I go by, or anybody in the insurance business, documentation wins the war. You should have photographs of everything you own. A lot of people go, oh yeah, I have pictures of my house, okay? Well, when it comes to a big claim, or God forbid your house gets what they call totaled or wiped off, or the roof gets ripped off, a lot of times you have to, they don't just pay you your policy limits across the board. You have to be able to document, and especially with your contents, you have to be able to document that if you had $150,000 worth of contents coverage, you got to list $150,000 worth of stuff in your house to get to that number before they'll pay you. So you have to know what you have. A lot of people take photographs of their house, but they don't go into any detail, because I've run into this with fires or other things. I say, oh, I got pictures of my whole house, or I have a video of my whole house. Well, first of all, I have never had an insurance company that will look at a video. Don't have time to sit here and watch movies, is what they'll tell you. So if you're taking pictures, take individual pictures, especially now with the cell phones. It was great. You can take thousands of them. Take pictures, individual pictures of anything of value in your home, as well as all four sides of your home, like they were talking about, your boat, your car, anything that's insured. You have to prove your claim. You as the policy holder, it's not up to the insurance company to disprove your claim. It's up to you as the policy holder to prove your claim. And believe me, they don't take anybody's word for anything. It's all about the money, okay? So, again, there are good insurance companies out there. There are good insurance adjusters, but there are also other people that don't always do the right thing. And like I tell people all the time, if the insurance companies did the right thing, the state wouldn't license us and they wouldn't allow us to go out there and help people. Why do you want to give me 10% of your money because the insurance company representative didn't honor your claim or didn't pay you what you need to fix your house? You're supposed to be made whole again. Your policy is a replacement. You're supposed to be put back to how you were to pre-loss condition. When I was talking about the contents, a lot of things that I do right away, and when I go into a house, like I'm helping somebody right now with a garage fire, okay, the whole house got smoked up. How many of you know what's in your drawers? You could tell me how many pairs of underwear you have and how many shorts and shirts and stuff. Well, if you have a picture of the inside of your drawers. A lot of times I have people who give me, here's a picture of my dresser. I've got all kinds of clothes in there. Well, they're gone. How do I know? And if you can't prove it, they ain't going to pay. So again, if you're taking pictures, sit there, take a picture of your dresser, then open the top drawer. Take a picture of the whole drawer. Everything as you go through it, because again, you got to be able to prove it. And as everybody knows, right now, clothes or something similar to that are very expensive, okay? Underwear and clothing and everything, and that adds up to, a lot of money in a hurry. The same thing with, tools in your garage, everything else. Oh, I got a Craftsman 10-foot-high chest here full of tools. It's gone. I don't see any tools. They say, how do we know it wasn't empty? Again, if you want to be successful when you have an insurance claim, you got to be able to prove your claim. So the best thing I can tell you is, people ask me all the time, well, how do I know if my policy is good for my house? What I recommend you do, because it's not like in the old days. It used to be when you got an insurance policy, the agent came to your house, took pictures, walked around, and made sure that, oh yeah, okay, you got a pool, we got that on there, okay, you got the deck out here, we could cover that. They don't do that anymore, okay? So the best thing I recommend to people around here is take all those pictures, go see your agent, sit down with them and say, okay, the 95% of the insurance companies right now will not cover your pool cage if it's not endorsed or added to your policy. Pool cages cost $15,000 to $20,000 now, the aluminum pool cages. If you don't have that on your policy, sorry, zero. It's not covered, okay? A lot of times, anything that's not attached to the property or stuff like a detached garage or shed or even fencing, anything that's susceptible to the wind, again, a lot of times you have to check and make sure that's covered under your policy because, again, that's going to be the first thing that goes. The shell of the home is most of the time, they definitely cover all of that. But the extra stuff, and then mainly the stuff inside the home, is very important to make sure that you know what you have. And again, as you probably heard even years ago, you know, if you do take all these pictures or whatever, send them to your kids or send them somewhere so they can retrieve them for you. Because if God forbid something happens to you or your cell phone or wherever they are, if you don't have them, SOL. Okay, so thank you very much.
I don't know about you, but I think we've covered a lot of territory. These speakers have been absolutely amazing. We do have time for just a couple of questions. If anyone has any questions, if you'd step up to the microphone. No questions?
I had a couple questions. How much gasoline should you stockpile
In the garage,
for your generators?
10 gallons.
10 gallons?
Yeah, we make that the max.
10 gallons. And do you guys also have a setup to evacuate elderlies or disabled that doesn't have a family or help? Is there anything set up for that?
Yeah, so we have what's called a special needs registry. A special needs shelter is a place for individuals who are electrically dependent on medical devices, so essentially oxygen patients. Part of that registry also identifies individuals who are mobility challenged, don't have their own way to get around. So if they just needed a ride to a regular shelter, that's an option on that registry as well. But a lot of the individuals who are in the special needs shelter need transportation to that shelter as well. So that's done through Charlotte County Transit.
Okay. Just curious. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for coming. I have a dog, and it is not a therapy dog, but if we are separated from that dog, my husband's going to have a heart attack. In the last hurricane, he was able to, because she bit out of her cage, the metal cage, they allowed him to stay with her in the back. What do you do with problem dogs?
Well, first and foremost, when I said be flexible, we have to be flexible too for these outlier situations that may happen in a shelter. So again, knowing that your dog does that, something to discuss with your veterinarian prior to the arrival of a storm that may mitigate some of that and calm the animal down, or make somebody at a pet-friendly shelter aware of that, so maybe we have to make some special accommodations there. Certainly not something we can do for everybody, but I can tell you during Hurricane Irma, when we had the pet-friendly shelters, we had 2 of them activated. We had to think outside of the box on more than a few occasions. there.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yes, it's not like we're just going to, let it happen. We will address it. We will make accommodations for that animal. But that's also something you can be a little proactive on as well on your side of the fence before
Okay.
the storm hits. So,
Yeah, and just to
you know
echo
what I
that
mean?
point, yes, please plan now for that. You've identified
Thank
the
you.
issue,
Yeah.
please plan now for that, because we'd never encourage anyone to go to the shelters if they have any other options, and especially if you have a situation
Right.
like that.
He's planning on staying in the house, and I'm like, oh, no, we're not. So the vet's going to prescribe something, but thank you for that, all of you.
Yeah.
My wife and I are immigrants from Illinois. We've been here 3 years now. So we've survived the lighter storms. And what I haven't seen yet is, does the news people say, okay, red zone, head west, head north? Do they give us some kind of indication as to when the big one is going to hit, so we have some directions? Because at this point, we don't know anybody else per se that we could stay with, other than the gentleman to the left, right of Ellen. We haven't been invited yet, but we're just wondering, is there some type of protocol that is forecasted or announced?
So the news isn't going to direct you where to evacuate, most likely, and we're not going to tell you exactly where to go. It's, you go where there's not going to be impacts. I know Gregg had mentioned Orlando's a good option, but it does, I-75, I-4, they become parking lots. The east coast of Florida, think Miami, Palm Beach, Broward County, the populations there are huge. Can you hear me now? All right, so think the east coast of Florida. Is that loud enough? All right, so Miami-Dade, Palm Beach, Broward counties, it may be counterintuitive because you're going to another coast where the storm might go to, but here's the reality. The storm surge threat on the east coast of Florida, because the continental shelf, is vastly different. Their storm surge evacuation zones are just a thin, narrow strip immediately next to the coast. They have exponentially more hotels and exponentially more shelters. So they're another good option to go to. Even if they're impacted, there's more places that are safe to seek shelter in. But if Miami asked, I didn't send you there. So what neither Ellen or I mentioned was how we get in touch with you guys, how we give you important information, and thank you for bringing that up. We have Alert Charlotte, which is our emergency notification system, and if you haven't signed up for it, please do. Completely free. The state of Florida pays for it. It's how we get emergency information to you immediately when we need to. You can get text messages, emails, phone calls, all of the above, one of the above. You can pick what you want to be notified on. I don't care what you pick. Just be careful. We get mosquito control notices quite often. But just by signing up, that's how I can tell you immediately when we have an evacuation notice. That's how Ellen and I's office, we can get in touch with you when there's a critical life-threatening situation. For non-emergency information, and we don't send things out that often, but it's preparedness tips. It's during the pandemic. It was when vaccinations were available. We have Charco Cares. That's for non-emergency information. And by texting the word Charco Cares to 888-777, you subscribe to that. Again, that's free of charge. We don't use it all that often. It's when, throughout hurricane season, we try maybe once every couple weeks to send you information, like a couple weeks ago when the sales tax holiday was taking place. It gives you tips and preparedness hints, but the emergency information is going to come out through Alert Charlotte. And that, how to sign up, is also in our guide.
And if I may, on the pet-friendly shelter sheets that I have out there, there's a QR code right in the corner. Scan your phone to it, takes you right there for sign-up, so. It's a great app.
One question. When you have your car in your garage and you're staying home and you have the garage door locked down, is it advisable to put your car as close as possible to the garage door?
Yes,
Yes.
keep it from blowing in.
Okay. And the ethanol, the procedure of eliminating the ethanol from gasoline, you mentioned that there is something that you add to the gasoline. Do you
There
do?
are products.
And you can do this while this is in your tank of your car. You can do this for your generator.
Yes,
Okay. And your generator, it says to cover your generator, not to leave it uncovered when it's outside. It can't be in a garage, and it can't be close to windows. So if you have a generator, will it be covered? You make a box for it, or how do you run it? Because I live in Port Charlotte with the jungle area. Oops, so all the way around my house, there's jungle. I mean, grass and pines and palmetto and whatnot. So if I have a generator and I get a small one for concerning what I need it for, where do I place it?
You mean, where do you place it when it's in use?
Yes.
Or in storage?
It's outside, it's in use.
Well, you should keep it away from windows.
Yes,
So it should be, you can put it in an area of your house where there are no windows or near a blank wall, but close enough that your electrical run is going to be convenient for you.
okay, and, excuse me, are these extension cords that are connecting from each individual appliance?
Yes.
Okay, are they specific extension
You
cords?
should use heavy-duty extension cords.
Okay,
The heaviest duty extension cords you can find at a hardware store to handle the electrical load.
Okay, thank you.
And the covers, you can get a cover for when your generator is outside, that are like grill covers. They're vinyl.
I got it.
And they'll cover it. My next door neighbor who didn't run his in time to get it ready for the storm, he keeps it covered. When I was talking about the bugs and the
Yes.
critters, the cover will keep a lot of that off your generator.
But
and
you-
just keep the weather off.
Okay, so when it's running, there's no cover,
Absolutely
obviously,
not.
and the animals wouldn't fiddle with it anyway, because we've got a lot of
Because
raccoons
of the
and,
vibrations and the noise.
Okay.
They're not gonna come around.
okay,
Now,
thank you.
yeah.
Adam, could you talk a bit about the wild animals? I always am a little bit concerned about the snakes when the water is flooding the area.
Yeah, so that's certainly a legitimate concern. Most of this is going to be after the storm has passed. We might have flooded areas that maybe last several days. And so now you've kind of expanded the habitat for snakes and alligators and some of these other things. I mean, you may have displaced some animals as well, and so you might see them in locations that they wouldn't typically be. So number one, when it comes to any kind of wildlife, is just simply leave them alone. Give them space as best you can. Always be alert and make sure you're looking for snakes and alligators, any kind of those, even if we are in bear territory, which just a little bit to the south, we certainly have bears that will roam around. But after the storm, when you've got piles of debris, you're now creating kind of a habitat for snakes. You might have damage to your home, and now you're almost inviting them in. So do what you can to eliminate those as quickly as you can. You've got damage to your home, fix it as fast as possible. You don't want birds coming in and nesting, or squirrels or something along those lines. You've got burrowing owls in this area, and burrowing owls, their burrows are going to get flooded out, and they're going to be displaced. And we often will see burrowing owls moving to a man-made structure temporarily to seek shelter, or maybe just create a temporary home. Well, it's great to have those owls around, but we don't want them to build in our home either. So do what you can to clean up those areas. Don't leave the debris piles for very long, and certainly just keep a vigilant eye out. Another thing is when the water rises, we will see other animals, including manatees, that will sometimes be out of their element, and then the water will recede, and sometimes the manatees will get stranded. That's a typical occurrence. We see pretty much every storm we have. We usually get a few instances of a manatee that has now been stranded because the water will rush out that fast. And so when that happens, if you see that, certainly don't do anything to try and push the mammal back into the water. That's going to cause more damage and harm to that manatee. But certainly give us a call. We have biologists that are on call and ready to respond to that scene. We have experts that can take care of that animal, check it for injuries, and assess the situation. So give us a call for that situation as well. That's pretty much it.
One more question for Paul. When you're evacuating, what is the procedure for a home safe? With all your papers that they tell you to take with you, what do you do to empty the safe?
Well, you should go ahead and take any valuables that you have with you, because a lot of times, once these homes do get damaged, there's a lot of looting that goes on and so on. That's in any kind of a situation where you have to leave your home, even a fire or anything. And then secondly, you should have your insurance information with you. And also, a big thing that happens right after these storms and so on, everybody's in a hurry to get some sort of repair started or do something, or what the policy calls mitigate damages. Nowadays, you have to be very careful, too, that most of these homeowners insurance policies, you have a $3,000 limit on what they call emergency services, i.e. someone to come board up your garage, tarp your roof, and so on. If it's more than that, and a lot of times, these kind of storms, like in Charlie, these people were coming from all over with tarps and everything else, And, they're running around charging people astronomical amounts to get a roof tarped and so on. The Army Corps of Engineers provides the blue tarp system, which does happen eventually. Of course, they're so overwhelmed in these kind of scenarios. But my best advice is that, you do have some sort of tarp. If you're riding out the storm, you should have a tarp or two somewhere, some sort of, again, duct tapes, any kind of fastening type things, something to seal up your house. You have to try to prevent further damage. And the main thing that a lot of people get confused also in the storm is that if we don't get much storm surge here, or there really isn't, so a lot of people think, oh, part of my roof got ripped off and my whole house got flooded. I'm calling my flood policy. No. Flood policy is for when there's storm surge and your whole neighborhood gets flooded. Okay, it has to be so many square feet, miles, or acres. So again, your homeowners covers pretty much most everything. So when in doubt, you always call your homeowners first. First of all, homeowners policies are much better than flood policies, because a lot of flood policies are that ACV. Again, the actual cash value, so you're not going to be made whole again. They're going to get you on that. But make sure that you know what's going on with your coverages, and again, beware of these people coming in. And if the guy says to you, hey, I can throw a tarp on your roof, but I want $5,000 cash, send them down the road. And if they don't leave, you call our local sheriff's department. They're trespassing. I've had people say, I'm getting up on this guy's roof. My neighbor told me to do it. And then they go and they try to bill people, or again, it brings out the worst people, when this stuff happens. So be very careful, be very vigilant, but always take all your valuables, family heirlooms, anything like that you can't replace. All right, you can't take everything in your car, or you're not going to get anywhere anyways. But the things that are important, and important papers, you should always have with you when you leave your home. And turn off your water and turn off your electric if you're leaving as well. Because again, less chance of any kind of pipe break that could flood your home, or fire.
Well, those were very detailed questions, and I think we got a lot of answers tonight. If you do have further answers, emergency management is going to be visiting our other branches. This, if you're new to the area, this is the Mid-County Regional Branch. We have another one in Port Charlotte called the Port Charlotte Branch, and emergency management will be visiting there, our Punta Gorda and also our England branches. So take an opportunity to visit all 4 branches. They're all wonderful. So thank you, panelists, for all your time. Thank you for this night, and please complete those comment blocks. Thank you.